We've now got the powder coated items back from the powder coating company. So it's laid out in the order of the vehicle. So we're stood at the back of the vehicle. We've got the rear axle here, it's the subframe, or its professional name is the diff carrier. And we've got the rear anti-roll bar, the upper spring arms, the rear trailing arms left and right, also with the trailing arm cradles. Backing plates, now those might look like the new BMW ones, and they were genuine new BMW ones, but we sent those for powder coating like we probably explained in the pre-powder coat video. So even though they were thin black paint from BMW and it looked okay, that's too thin, it doesn't last very long, so we have them powder coated on top. So then we've got the rear stoppers, or the subframe rear washers, they're in black. Rear anti-roll bar links, they've been done in powder coated silver. Then we've got the front push rod in black. We've got the left hand side metal fuel filter under tray in black, along with the new exhaust plates. Again, they come with a really thin, as with all BMW panels, they come black and thin paint black, so we have them powder coated. Fuel tank straps are in silver, and as is the gearbox cross member. And then moving towards the front, we've got the front reinforcement under tray, which is in silver, and then the front subframe in black, the kingpins in black, and also the front backing plates, which again are genuine BMW, but we've made sure that those have been painted and powder coated so that they are as strong and as thick as they possibly can be. So looking a little bit closer, you won't really see much difference, but it's now a thicker paint because it's powder coat compared to the original BMW finish, which was just a really small thin dip-in process on the black. So we've got subframe over here, which come out excellently. Really pleased with this front aluminium undertray. Looks very good, very similar to the original aluminium finish, but that is a powder coat colour that we use to replicate the aluminium finish. So very, very pleased with that. Kingpins have come out great. All the masking is excellent, as we'd expect. No masking, the masking has been stopping the powder coat go onto the contact patch for the wheel bearing, also on the thread and on the rear piece where the dust cover is pressed on, also in the tube, in the threads, contact parts for the brake calipers, as well as the steering knuckle and behind the back the front wishbone, and then the threads for the backing plate. They've all been professionally masked. Lots of effort in the preparation stage before you go ahead and do the blasting and then the powder coating. Gearbox cross members come out very well, looks excellent. When you look in all the small little gaps and reinforcement parts, it's all fully coated and looking wonderful. There isn't a great amount more to show really. The rest of it is all being either zinc plated or refurbished for new. So we've got some other brackets that we're still waiting for, which are being done in a zinc yellow finish, which are some of the brackets for the Xenon drop link level system, front and rear brackets for that. The small little pieces that are all, sort of almost too small to powder coat, those are being protected above and beyond the original BMW finish that they come with from factory. Even though we start with new BMW products for those small items, they're coated again on top. And then the exhaust system, which is a 5-piece system, 3 exhaust pieces and 2 manifolds, those are being professionally coated Zerkotech, so those won't be too long and they'll be back here, and then we'll be able to get those installed as well. So the next stage is to start fitting all these up with bushes. So we've got subframe bushes to go in the subframe, the diff bush that goes in the front of there, the trailing arm has front bushes, ball joints top and bottom, wheel bearing, backing plate, wheel hub, then the brake, handbrake shoe system and mechanism assembly, then the brake discs, pads, calipers, lots of things to be done, and we're really looking forward to carrying on with this project now. We're just starting to go through our batch of nuts and bolts and fixings that have come back from the platers. So that's a zinc plating process. So we're going to lie these out and just check them and maybe even do some comparisons, old versus new. Hundreds of fixings and brackets have come back now. We've laid them all out. So these are zinc plated with that sort of yellow passivated colour, which is fairly often seen on restored vehicles, and also sometimes straight from BMW. But however, most of the time BMW's components all come with either silver on their fixings or black, and it doesn't last very long. So as you remember, in this video series we showed all the new bolts that this owner had purchased. All these are new components that were purchased, and rather than just install them on the car, we then sent them for zinc plating to make sure that they are stronger in their terms of protection coverage than the original BMW items. So here it is laid out: bolts, nuts, fixings, brackets. We've got things from subframe bolts, rear trailing arm bolts, brake pipe and fuel pipe brackets. There are more of those, but we just started fitting the brake pipes. We've had to use them already. Anti-roll bar brackets, reinforcement plate brackets, ABS reluctor rings, exhaust clamp kit, a front wheel bearing dust guards, the rear exhaust rubber mount brackets, flexi brackets for the trailing arm and for the front struts, all the xenon bracket hardware, brake clips, nuts, all the drive shaft special bolts and the washers, anti-roll bar brackets, handbrake bracket cable brackets, handbrake adjust and fixing assemblies and the pivots, as well as the shoes where the springs hold the shoes together, and then spring clips here and here, the springs that hold those in. So there is a multitude of components. The majority of all are new, like I say, and we're really looking forward to starting reassembling the vehicle with all these nice new clean products. Here's some before and after examples, and also during, which we'll talk about on the handbrake system later. These are the V-brace mounting bolts, so you see what they commonly come out like when they're the old rusty bolts, and then what a new coated bolt looks like. Then we've got the bolts here for the front reinforcement plate. Nice difference on those. Going along to the handbrake spring pin and springs. Then we've also got here the drive shaft bolts. Lovely difference those. I think those are my favourite bolts actually, looking at those. We've got the typical 668 nuts, the M12 by 1.5 lock nuts for the rear axle assembly. We've got the handbrake adjuster pivot mechanism. That's a 3-piece adjuster. All those have been split apart and individually coated. And then the drive shaft bolt reinforcement plates make a nice difference. And we've got a couple of items here that show some stages, different stages of the work, if you compare them to having old or slightly rusted bolts done. These are some that we sent, some second-hand bolts, rusty ones, that would have had rust on them, much like this, that we've had coated, but because the rust had pitted the metal of the bolt, you can see where the zinc really hasn't finished it in a really shiny, smooth, much like a new bolt. So this is a rusty bolt that's been coated, and yes, it does have some form of protection, but probably not as good as the new bolt, and obviously it's pitted, so it does dull down visually. Compare that to having a new bolt done, massive difference. Similar thing here with the anti-roll bar, rear anti-roll bar pivot bracket bolts that have been done, which are socket cap screws, M8 thread. Nice difference on those. You can see if you hadn't have had a new one done, you'd be relatively pleased when that one came back. It's coated, it's a zinc yellow colour, but it has got that typical pitting where the corrosion has already been eaten at the thread and the top. So it's more protected than going for the old rusty one, but not as good as having a new one plated, for example. And then the last one example, which is probably the most easiest to understand and visual, is the handbrake pivot mechanism, which are really always quite corroded and normally are so seized at this joint here that you can't really rock them or move, but they should be able to rock and move like this, because this is where the handbrake cable pulls upon and then forces this edge and this edge to push the handbrake shoe towards the other one. So that's what they look like when they're rusty. Some are more worse than that as well. That's if you have a rusty one coated, which is protected and moves a lot freer, but it's still got that metal pitting, which you just can't get rid of. That's where corrosion has eaten the metal. But it is still an acceptable part to use to some degree if it was coated. However, the best process we're seeing is to have brand new ones coated, because there's a massive difference between having a rusty one coated and a brand new one. Where that metal was original, smooth and flat, it has remained that, and you've got all those different colours which show how good the metal clearly is.